When did you realize you were the different one in your family? Maybe you keep the peace. Maybe you're the most functional one in the family. Maybe you're the one to clean up everybody else's mess. And after a while, that defense mechanism, which once kept you safe, now just burns you out. It ruins everything. It gets in the way of your career, your earning potential, your business. It messes with your relationship, and it even messes with your decisions and the confidence that you have or don't have within yourself, where you're constantly doubting everything, wondering if you're doing the right thing or if you're doing enough. And then when you do start to set boundaries, people might villainize you. They might say things like, oh, you're so selfish, or you need to get a thicker skin, like what's wrong with you? And then you just have all this resistance. For me, I realized I was different when I was in college, and I sat down with a therapist, and this therapist, he said, wow, Dan, you seem to be the person that takes care of everybody, not just in your family, but also in your life. And he said, welcome to being an adult child of an alcoholic. Those words were so deep, they were so profound, and I didn't realize the amount of weight they would carry up until I was in my late 20s. And I'm thankful that I've done this type of work where I work with people's minds and I work with their trauma and their anxiety. I'm very thankful I've done this work since I was a teenager, because it helped me recognize some of those own patterns that I had. And I recognized I needed to heal those patterns. I needed to heal those wounded identities. But here's what happened. That therapist then said, you know what, Dan, I'm going to send you to Al-Anon. And when you go to Al-Anon, you're going to hear from other people who have the same stories that you have. And truth be told, a lot of people in my family were alcoholics or struggled with substance abuse or addiction. And I learned very early on to just keep the peace. I learned to work really hard so that way people don't have to worry about me. I learned how to be the one that cleans up everybody else's mess. And as a result of that, I became the most functional one. I became the one that everybody relies on, where I started putting out everybody else's fires. But it got to a point where enough was enough. That's where I thought, when this therapist told me go to Al-Anon, I was like, oh, perfect, this is great. And so I went. And I started going to these meetings, and they were at this church, and there were a bunch of people there, and we would break off into different groups. And I went to this Al-Anon meeting for probably about 6 to 8 months or so. And all it was a bunch of people who were much older than I was, who were talking about when they were 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and they would open up their parents' booze bottles and dump them down the drain. Or when they would go to grandma or grandpa's house, or when they go to their aunt's house, and they knew that if everybody drank, things would get way out of hand, and then they'd be up all night long worrying and having to listen to arguments and fights, so they would actually hide the booze bottles. I listened to this for about 6 to 8 months. The same people telling the same stories over and over and over again. And I would look at these people and I'd think, oh my gosh, is this going to be me when I'm like in my 50s and 60s, where I'm going to be at this same meeting talking about the same things affecting me? There's got to be a better way. And that's why I realized many of us get caught up in these stories. And when we get caught up in these stories, we start creating this victim mentality. But we don't even realize we're doing it. We don't realize we're doing it. We think that's part of the process. And we take on this identity, the identity of being the fixer, the problem solver, the peacekeeper, putting everybody else's needs ahead of our own just to prevent conflict or chaos. We learn how to scan every single situation for problems or for what can go wrong, so that way we can either be aware of what will go wrong so we can brace for impact, or maybe we can avoid the problems before they even happen. And this is what happens when you grow up in a household or family of addiction, substance abuse. This is what happens if you grow up in chaos, or if you are taking care of other people in your family when you're younger. You learn these patterns early on. But here's what most people don't realize. These patterns don't have to define you. This doesn't have to be who you are or how you live your life. But this is why it's so difficult for people to break out of these patterns, because those patterns once kept you safe. In fact, they probably helped you become successful. They helped you thrive in chaos, which means you've probably learned how to function in a career where it feels like you're taking on everybody else's business or you're taking on everybody else's tasks or jobs. You might have even risen to your career or risen in your business or even become a leader in your profession because you got used to people relying on you and you got used to solving problems. But then what happens is it creates this internal conflict. On the outside, you probably look like you have your shit together. You probably look like you're successful. You've made some pretty big wins in your life or your career. You probably have a pretty stable relationship or marriage or not. But on the inside, you're one spilled glass of water away from a complete mental freaking breakdown. You're constantly on edge and you're wondering, is this what my life is going to be like? I don't know how much longer I can keep going this way and not burn out. Like this is going to crush me. And eventually, if you don't take care of it, it will. So that's when I started working. When I was in my late 20s, I started doing my own inner work where I consulted other hypnotists, therapists, coaches, and I learned that I don't always have to be the peacemaker. I don't always have to be the one that takes care of everybody. I don't always have to be that person that I was when I was younger for a defense mechanism to keep myself safe. As a result, I healed my anxious attachment style. As a result of doing this deep inner work and working on my inner game, I resolved a bunch of anger issues that I had because I was carrying around so much resentment, so much anger, so much built up tension. And then when I'd get angry, I'd feel guilty and I'd feel ashamed. And so doing some inner work, and I did this inner work over the course of about 6 months. And it literally changed not just my mind, not just my body. I felt like I could breathe again, even though I was still going through some pretty chaotic moments. Around this time, I was the caretaker of my dad. My dad had stage 4 lung cancer, and I was taking care of him. At the time, I was in a pretty toxic relationship where we were both just growing apart, and we were both stuck in that relationship. At the time, I was also still dealing with the people in my family who were addicts and substance abusers. And then I realized that doesn't have to be my story anymore. I realized that just because the universe sometimes throws shit at me and challenges, I don't have to get stuck or caught up in those challenges. I can actually work through them. And when I started realizing that about myself, I started getting all these other people into my practice and into my programs who were just like I was. They were battling with the same battles that I used to battle. They were getting stuck in the same type of attachments, in the same type of relationships. They were getting stuck in the same patterns that just went on and on and on. And then it caused so much conflict, so much chaos in their career, in their business, and within themselves, in their family infrastructure. They just couldn't turn their mind off. And those same patterns that once helped them grow and thrive were now becoming the destruction of these people. And that's where I started stepping in, and I started combining hypnosis, modern hypnosis, not like the traditional, wave a pocket watch hypnosis, but I started using modern versions of hypnosis. I started learning more about traditional therapeutic protocols, and I would actually combine some principles and protocols like acceptance commitment work, shadow integration, solution-based work, cognitive behavioral work, dialectical behavioral work. I combine all of this with modern hypnosis, psychosensory therapy, somatic work to really just get those stuck emotions out of these people's nervous systems, minds, and bodies. And then I would help them clear the underlying emotional core of the trauma, of the issues, and of those stuck identities. And guess what would happen? Within about 3 to 6 months, these people would make dramatic transformations. Their relationships would get better, or they would finally have the confidence to end the toxic relationships that they were in. They started setting boundaries without feeling like a massive douche canoe. they started to grow in other areas of their life where they felt stuck in. Life stopped feeling like a chore. I helped them move out of the have to mentality into the choose to and into the get to mentality, which, by the way, when you are in the choose to mentality, you're making decisions from a place of choice and it feels so empowering. And then you move to the get to mentality where you're present, you're at peace, you're in a state of flow, and you're in a state of gratitude. I started helping people go to fearing challenges and fearing problems and fearing chaos to the mentality of, okay, if it happens, bring it on. We're going to work through this. And instead of getting stuck in the chaos, the conflict, the trauma, and the problems, they move through life like, you know what, the universe has my back. I'm strong. I accept that life is composed of moment in times. I'm patient with myself and more patient with the people around me, so I'm practicing restraint. I trust that I have the strength and the resources to figure it out because everything is figure-it-outable. And as things are figure-it-outable, I can be unfuckwithable in whatever situation I go into. So people started finding their voice, standing up for themselves. And guess what would happen? Yes, many relationships would strengthen, but some relationships would also fall by the wayside. Why? Because some people who form bonds with you, they form bonds with the people pleaser. They form bonds with the person who puts everybody else's needs before their own. They become used to the person who only gives, but then when it's your time to receive, other people leave. And so yes, this is a consequence or a result of doing some of the deep inner work. Many relationships you strengthen and some just fade away. And when those relationships fade away, guess what happens? You make space in your life for the people who are ready to receive the authentic you, the real you. Not the you that was still struggling with trauma, not the you that was chaos or conflict avoidant, not the you that was constantly scanning for problems or bracing for impact or feeling on edge, but the authentic you. The you who can not only give, but can also receive. The you who understands finally that you don't have to perform to be loved, and that if you set a boundary, you're not going to be abandoned, you're not going to be alone, but you're going to make space for people who respect your boundaries and who also give you more love and compassion because they admire your strength. That's why I do this work. I do this type of work because I was you. If you're watching this video and it punches you in the gut, I was you. Sometimes I still have these little reminders and blips that say, oh, Dan, pump the brakes, my friend. And when I have those little insights, it's a reminder for me to dial things down a little bit, to take some peace, to pause, and to let myself feel free again. And you might be wondering, okay, Dan, how does all this work? How does all this work? People join my program, and we're doing a lot of deep inner work. It usually takes about 3 months. Most people notice results after just the first couple of weeks. I've broken my work into 3 phases. Phase number 1 is what I call deep discovery. This is where we're doing a deep dive into your mind, your patterns, your programs, so we can set a really strong foundation. We're uncovering your hidden values. We're uncovering those hidden limiting belief systems that you might not even have been aware were sabotaging you. You might have thought they were helping you through life, but what they're actually doing is keeping you stuck and sabotaging you. We also uncover those wounded identities that need healing and that need inner work. So step 1 is a deep dive into you. It's a deep dive into what I call self-discovery. So you can become the expert on you. Phase 2 is what I call the shift system. This is where we are clearing the underlying emotional core of a lot of those stuck emotions that you have in your nervous system that you've carried on since childhood. Every week, we do a different clearing. And these clearings are a combination of modern hypnotic principles, subconscious communication, psychosensory therapy intervention, psychosomatic intervention. We do a lot of nervous system stimulation as well. We do a lot of subconscious hypnosis, but a modern version of hypnosis. And it all comes together where you start feeling more at peace, more comfortable, more at ease. You no longer feel wounded or broken or stuck. And if challenges happen, because they will, If challenges happen, and when they happen, you'll be able to handle them. You'll be able to embrace them and work through them instead of getting stuck in them or trying to avoid them. The reason why you probably feel anxious, stressed, stuck, overwhelmed is because what you resist will persist. And when you move through life in a state of avoidance, constantly trying to avoid anything or everything that might make you feel uncomfortable, what you are going to resist is ultimately going to persist. So when you try and avoid the conflict, when you try and avoid the anxiety, guess what's going to happen? It's just going to be reinforced in the background of your mind. That's when your life shrinks and gets really small. Instead, we want to expand your life, and we can expand your life by actually subtracting. So phase number 2 is doing that deep clearing work, working on the shift. And phase number 3 is upgrading and updating all of those subconscious patterns, those belief systems, and also giving you little micro subconscious habits that stop the patterns of stress and anxiety in its tracks. Here's why this is important. All those patterns, all of those programs that you have running in the background of your mind, they're learned, habituated behaviors. They were actually implanted into your subconscious mind and your nervous system when you were younger, and they were supported and reinforced throughout adulthood. This is why you still have some of those problems, because you're still trying to solve adult problems with childlike resources, and it's not going to work. So we need to stop those patterns, and we need to carve a new groove of how you want to feel, be, and what you want to do instead. So that way, every day when you wake up, you're going to be aware of what you're thinking that's different, what you're feeling that's different, and what you're going to be doing, which is different. I help you manage your thoughts, because your thoughts influence your feelings, sensations, and emotions, which influence your behaviors, actions, reactions, and responses. So when we start at a thought level, we can change those feelings and sensations and those emotions, and then we change the reactions and responses. This is deep inner work, and it is accelerated. So you don't have to go through years of therapy, take mind-altering medications, or go on your next ayahuasca trip or whatever. Now, I'm not saying that those things are bad. I think that everything can help on some level. But even if you've done all those things, you probably still feel a void, which is why you're still watching this video. So here's what you can do to take the next step. To take the next step, all you have to do is just apply for a solution. That's all. Just apply. There is an application that's somewhere around this video, and that application, it's free to fill out. It's relatively short. It's only going to take you about 10 minutes. Now, I will tell you this, though. The more thought and effort you put in, the easier it's going to be for me to help you and find you a solution. So you fill out the application. I review all the applications myself, and I only take people into my program that I'm confident I can help, and people that I'm going to enjoy working with, and also people who are coachable. So as you're going through the application, make sure that you put as much into it as you possibly can, so I have the best insight, where I can give you the best insight into a solution. Then the next step after that, I may send you a solution, which could be a Google Doc that you review. It could be we have a short call, or it could even be where I guide you through the program. So you have a lot of options after you fill out that application, and I'm going to review it. Please fill it out, because it's free. It doesn't take that much time, and it could be your first step into breaking free from all that stuff that holds you back. I hope you got a lot out of this video. I look forward to hopefully getting the opportunity to work with you and use some of the same resources that helped me to help you, because I've now helped over 13,000 people around the world just like you. I look forward to getting the opportunity to work with you. As always, be well, do good, be true to who you are, and happy healing.